I'm Tiffany Jones.
And I'm Kelly Lewis.
And we're your Revenue Insiders.
If you're enjoying the Revenue Insiders, we'd love your support. Follow us, rate, and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Your feedback helps us grow and reach more listeners like you.
Today from my living room.
Yay!
Christmas is not down yet at my house. I was not the first one to have Christmas up, but I might be the last one to take it down.
That's fair. You've been gone.
I have. I've been gone. There's a tree dying in the corner over
I saw
there.
that. It looks
sad. Like ornaments are falling off of it.
It might be a fire risk. You might need to take it out of your house.
Okay. I know. Jeremy said I have to take all the ornaments down and then we'll get it out of the house.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll take care of that after this episode.
But the reason we are joining you from her living room today is because we are doing our own annual planning. We are planning 2025, at least Q1 of 2025.
I think we can get through Q2.
Maybe. I would say, do as we say, not as we do. Our annual planning will not look like our annual planning playbook because we are two people. Logs. No decision logs. Well, no, we actually will have decision logs.
That's true. No program managers.
No program managers. No monetization. At least yet. But yes, excited to start the new year with all of you and talk about our predictions. We're also excited to hear from all of you what your predictions are. What are we missing? So think about what we're talking about and think about what we're missing.
Okay. 2025 predictions. As we go through our planning, a number of these have surfaced. For me, the biggest thing that I think we're going to see is AI productivity starting to be woven into board requests, whether that's like a net new KPI that boards are looking for, or specifically to measure how much of your productivity is a result of AI investments you're making. So think like your return on investment for AI. I really think that we're going to see a lot more of that in this 2025 year.
Totally. I think last year board conversations revolved around what is your product strategy for AI? Like, what are you doing with your product? And there's probably been, and there definitely have been questions on like, what are you doing internally for AI? But I think the reporting out of those results in actually measuring your success on whether you're taking advantage of AI is going to be something that the board's questioning and probably digging pretty deep into. And so you should have a really good story going into your upcoming board meetings.
I mean, your investment in AI over this past year has probably spiked considerably, and it's just going to go up with some of the innovations that we're seeing. And so it has to become a question. Like, you have to make sure that you're investing responsibly, both from a like cybersecurity safety perspective, but also from like, what are the results you're getting from those investments?
Totally. So I'll jump into my first prediction, which actually aligns very nicely with that, is we have seen a ton of investment in AI in individuals or companies' products and what they're doing. And going back to my enablement roots, I think that we are going to see the product enablement specialist become a unicorn. So these are individuals, if you are a product enablement specialist, like, get your resume ready because you are going to be highly sought after because this is such an important skill and not everyone can do it. You have to be really technical. You have to be able to enable both on the value side of product as well as like the technical components. Your support teams need enablement. Your customer success teams need enablement. How are you thinking through that?
Yeah, I mean, it goes directly to what you were saying around like all the investment you've made in the product side of what you're building for your AI. And now your teams need to go sell it. It's like they've been selling it, but like we're grappling with that. Like, how do you orient that message appropriately, you know, across the sales enablement activities that you're doing in line with product marketing, in line with what product's building?
Totally. And that requires you to be really agile.
Yes.
Product enablement has been so based off, so many companies do this off of big launch moments.
Yeah.
And you're releasing stuff constantly. Now. You can't do these big launch moments. It's going to be these shorter little spurts of information that you need your sellers to immediately understand and be able to talk about.
The growth of the underlying AI that all of this is built off of is coming so rapidly right now that your product has to be evolving at a rapid rate. Like you don't have an option. Like even if you wanted to be more stagnant, you really can't. You can't do that at this point in time. So I totally agree.
One thing that I think also plays into this product enablement piece is roadmap discussions. Throughout my career, I've noticed that roadmap is a topic you always talk about. Mm-hmm. You talk about your vision in the sales process.
Yeah.
But very rarely are your AEs, account executives, or your main sellers the ones who can carry that conversation confidently. It's so often your sales engineers or the CEO of the company that you're bringing in, or your head of. Long gone are those days.
Yeah.
If you're a seller, you better get really confident in talking about your AI story and your vision and
the roadmap of what your company's doing.
Totally.
Like, talk about the integration we've talked about in the annual planning series we've been doing. You have to be so integrated in what's coming down the pike from like a roadmap perspective so that you can come off as an advisor in your selling role, which is what everyone expects right now, right? That's what you're doing.
Think a lot of sellers, this is going to be a new skill for them. They're not as comfortable having those conversations. They're used to bringing in experts for these conversations.
Well, that coupled with, like, we talked about this a little bit in prior episodes, but during COVID, we had this rise of like order taking as a role. And so we have so many people that have entered the sales role, and that was their first several years of experience in the tech industry. And we are well out of that phase now. We're not in order taking. And so we're still adjusting to that advisory role. I think that coupled with that AI component is really going to amp up the need for really technical selling for almost everyone in the tech space.
Totally. It's going to be a shift. And I'm excited to see how different companies tackle this, what innovation comes out of this. I think it'll be interesting.
We've talked a lot about AI, and I do feel passionately about the topic of AI, but I actually think this year we are going to start to see more product innovation outside of the AI realm. I think that money is going to get a little looser. We've seen a lot of really heavy investment in AI specifically. Like, that's where all of the funding has been going to. But I think going into this year, we're going to start to see some investment in non-AI product innovation, which again is first in the last few years. So I think it's coming for us all, though.
Interesting. That is something I hadn't thought about, didn't have on my radar. So I'm going to be watching for. And
I mean, you can't, it's a race with AI right now. So everyone has to compete in that race, but really to differentiate, you have to do something beyond just racing for AI. Unless you're Claude, you're Anthropic, or you are Chat GPT or OpenAI, where that is your core business. You have to keep up pace with those models and what you're building off of, but you've got to innovate somewhere else as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think going back a little bit to our experience and what the seller is talking about and the conversations they're having with their buyers, one of the conversations that I think is going to become even more important is that post-sales experience. One thing I see often if you look at a company's sales process is, when do you talk about the post-sales experience? What is my experience as a customer? It usually gets like one or two slides or pieces of the conversation in your initial conversations. And then it's okay, we're getting closer to vendor of choice. Let's have this deep dive post-sales conversation. But if I'm a buyer, I actually want to know about that more. And the reason I care about that more is because I want to know, how hard is it for me to talk to a human? With everyone innovating in AI,
100%. It's the same thing as the product innovation outside of AI. Like, humans become such a bigger differentiator as AI becomes more prolific. Like, everyone can build off of these AIs. Like, you have to have that differentiation.
And I'm going to want to know, do I need to pay more to talk to a human? What does that look like? Is there a SKU for that I need to be considering?
Will I know if I'm talking to a real human or an AI agent underneath it all? I mean, one of the things I love about Salesforce's approach to this is, like, it's all says powered by AI when you use their agents. Like, they're not trying to cover that, but what are you going to build as a product that like maybe does mask some of that? So that first human touch isn't really a human. So digging into that post-sales experience as a buyer, I think is going to be a huge step that I look at.
I also think I'm going to want that to feel very seamless. I understand you should. If you're a good company and you're investing wisely, you are using AI as part of your post-sales experience.
Of course you are. Yes, obviously.
Like, I go to the doctor's office and have to refill my name out on the form. Like, how do you create a really seamless transition between the human and AI? And then how do you tell that story so it's not this repetitive, okay, I've already told you all of this. I entered all of this information already. How does it feel really seamless between that transition from AI to the human?
How are you using AI to support what your customer needs and not support just what you need as an internal business? Like that, I think that shift, I don't know. Do you think companies are going to make that shift, or buyers are going to force that shift within this year?
I think it's going to be buyer led for
I
sure.
think so too.
I think the smartest companies, and if you are a company right now, you should be thinking about this, but I think it's just going to get started as buyers. We've both been in the buyer seat. Yeah. I'm going to ask this question. And if you don't have a solid answer, I'm not going to move forward.
I mean, a lot of why I choose vendors, especially in like really highly competitive areas, is based on the post-sales experience that I'm getting from those vendors. When I'm getting really crummy experiences, I am much more prone to look elsewhere for products as long as they can meet my MVP across the board, where I get a partner from a vendor. And so if AI starts to like monopolize that partnership, it's going to be a problem for sure. And so, yeah, I do think buyer-led is definitely the answer.
Okay, so I have a question for you, Tiffany. I've been thinking about this a lot. Currently, when this is announced, my consulting business will be announced. So, little teaser here. I'm not in an operations role today.
Yes.
But I'm thinking as an operations leader, and I want to know where your head's at on this. I think it's really intimidating to buy a big platform or make big tech purchases this year. I think you're going to see a lot in my prediction, and this is what I want your feedback on, is that as an ops leader, you might want to sit back and kind of watch how things, at least for these first 6 months, are transitioning. And you might make smaller investments with best of breed little niche products that can fill a gap, but aren't a product that if you need to throw it out in 2 years, you're going to regret that purchase. It's a purchase that gets you to what you need to do now. But I'm wondering if we're going to see less investment in these big, like I'm not going to go buy a new CRM.
Right. I think that that's true. I think that you won't see large purchases of net new software this year. I do think what you will see though is investments in current large purchases you have, like where you've invested already heavily in a software and they have the innovative feature that you also have a niche company for. I think you're going to see people lean towards the known because they know they have the security set up. And so it is, well, you'll buy, in some cases, though, those don't exist in those big software platforms. So you are buying these niche ones and you are going to solve for those problems. And we've done that even this past year. And I was really hesitant to do it. I'm risk adverse when it comes to software purchasing.
Oh, you're an ops leader. Weird.
Yeah, strange. Okay. But I did this year and we made the leap and it's been a huge productivity lift. And so we will do more of those spot ones. I talked to a few at HighSpot Spark actually that we are still looking at that can kind of plug in that AI realm. And so I do think you're going to pick up a lot of these like small functionality and it'll be a question of have the big players that you already have in seat already built something similar? Or if not, you're just going to buy those smaller ones instead of convert to a whole new platform that has everything that you're looking for baked in.
Totally. And this makes me really excited. I think competition is so healthy. I think for the last couple of years, because funding for these really new startups has been non-existent.
Yeah.
It's been really hard for them to get traction. But I think if you're an early stage startup with something that's very innovative, can integrate with the big platforms they already have, but also solve an immediate problem, I think you're going to see a ton of success this year. And I hope those companies are taking advantage of those ops leaders that are in this mindset right now.
Yeah, I think the one pitfall that especially like newer companies, smaller startups are going to have is using the term artificial intelligence or AI, or what I think is going to become, we're going to start hearing artificial super intelligence as a term this year when it comes to what people are designing, but that's not what they mean. And you're going to have much savvier ops leaders and buyers who are exposed to AI within the confines of their own enablement and product builds that aren't going to buy the jargon. And so you have to be really specific with what you're adding. You can add productivity to the sales team without being artificial intelligence or artificial super intelligence. And so I do think we're going to start to see some people be, what's the right word? Like a little jaded by the term AI and how it's used in things, especially I think, and this is a sly prediction, but I think we're going to hear a lot more artificial super intelligence. That's the word I think we're going to hear, the buzzword of 2025. That's what I'm going to call.
It cracks me up every time these new AI terms come out and how quickly they're adopted. So an example of that is the AI agents. It was Salesforce and Microsoft came out
immediately.
And immediately every company in the tech space has an agent, which by definition, they probably do, but it's just so interesting. And our poor marketers out there, you are our heroes, trying to keep up with all of this. But I agree, as a buyer, I'm going to be way more skeptical about what you're saying, and I'm actually going to want proof of what it does.
Yeah. I do think this is not a prediction, but as an ops leader and anyone in the rev ops, rev strategy space, like you have to be really knowledgeable on AI, not just in your company's product roadmap and like what you're delivering to your sellers, but in general. So that you're making the right buying decisions, so that you're doing the right things for your sellers, you're gaining the right productivity, and you're making the right bets, right? Sometimes you want to bet ahead of that innovation and get in early. And sometimes you want to be cautious. And like I said, it might be a little bit more risk adverse in that area. But I think being knowledgeable in everything that's evolving in AI will help you make better informed decisions and keep you agile to what you're doing.
Absolutely. So moving on to another prediction. Okay. This is very enablement focused. I've spent the last 3 years there, so that's probably why. So my next prediction is that we are going to see the generation of TikTok enablement.
Yes.
And when I say that, it's this bite-sized enablement that doesn't come in these large formal trainings, coursework. I think that it's just not going to exist in
it doesn't.
The future.
If my team is listening to this, which I'll guilt them into all doing it, we've been on we call it the bite-size revolution
I like
for this past year. Okay. And so a lot of where it gets really heavy is in post-production work. You do a lot of the same upfront work, and then post-production is where you spend your time getting bite-sized. And to me, that's almost a shift in enablement responsibilities and like 100%. Rethinking like where you're hiring some of those specialties, because post-production becomes so much more important in anything that you're going around to produce from like a video or content perspective.
So I have some predictions that align to that, actually. So I've been spending a lot of my sabbatical networking, which has been amazing.
Yes, it's hard to get on your calendar.
I know, it's weird. I should be on sabbatical. I keep on telling everyone I'm failing sabbatical, but that's okay. One of my predictions is, well, I guess this is two predictions. You're going to see a lot more nudge enablement. And when I mean nudge enablement, this is a term that I first saw from Gartner. I don't know if they were the ones who came up with it, but enablement via text message or via Slack that's coming in these bite-sized forms that someone 5 minutes at their beginning of their day can absorb, think critically about, and then immediately take action on.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about nudge enablement is I think it changes the role of an instructional designer. And I think if you're an instructional designer, you've got a very cool opportunity to become way more strategic in your team. So instructional designers spend so much of their time designing these really large courses and taking all of this information and trying to turn it into a course.
As exciting as possible, as engaging as possible. It's an uphill battle.
Totally. Most of them that I talk to actually don't enjoy the build process. They enjoy the design process. And so the great news is there are companies out there now that can take these really large documents or pieces of information about a new product launch, for example, and can make it bite-sized and can do the course creation for you. So instead, you're thinking about your overall enablement strategy, your learning strategy, hopefully TikTok, bite-sized. But instructional designers, I think that role is going to shift a lot, and they should be thinking about how they talk to their leaders about their roles and responsibilities and how they can play a bigger part in learning design versus learning build.
Yeah. And if you don't have an instructional design on your team already, like this is where these AI tools that are so prolific for all of us are so helpful. I mean, we joke that ChatGPT is our third employee here at the Revenue Insiders.
It is our third, maybe fourth employee too.
But I mean, very productive employee. But you add, you put your enablement plan into something like that or Perplexity, and you ask it, like, what are the nudge enablements I should create? And like, you have to get really specific with your prompts. Like that's where the power comes in using AI as an individual contributor or an enablement leader. But I think that's where you start to, like, if you're a smaller team, you don't have some of those more designated roles, you can really start harnessing the power of that still using AI and even free tools as your source there.
Absolutely. Okay. I think you have a prediction around the role of revenue operations.
I do. So going back to where I talked about the lack of innovation that we've had in funding and innovation outside of AI in the last few years, really the kind of slope down post-COVID. What we've seen is the over-reliance on revenue operations to really fill into this revenue strategy role. It's become hyper-critical for your company to survive, to really get into the data-driven nuance of how you're going to grow, because money's not just being thrown at you anymore. And I think what we're going to see in 2025 is the emergence of revenue strategy being a critical strategic role for organizations. It's not a behind the scenes operations role anymore. It's part of maybe in some cases your executive team, where you're really leading the strategy of how you combine all of these very quick moving pieces that are going to start to pick up with innovation, as well as like this data nuanced decision making that you've been working on for the last few years to be this strategic powerhouse in the organization, especially on the go-to-market side.
Yeah, we both wrote down 5 predictions we did, and then shared them with each other. And this was one that we were actually the most aligned on. And I agree with you. I think the role of revenue operations, I think you're not going to see that title as often as the lead. I think it's going to be these really revenue strategy roles.
Yes.
And I think it's going to combine a couple pieces. So it's the chief of staff. So the person who is the right-hand person to the CRO.
The chief of staff title. So like, let's revolutionize that.
But yes, agreed with you. But I do think it is the pieces of the chief of staff role that are very strategic.
Yes.
I think fall under this revenue strategy role or some type of strategic role. I think you're going to need a really good understanding of behavior change. So you're going to need someone who has enablement experience. And then obviously you're going to need that operations experience as well. So these unicorns of individuals that can bring all of that together are going to be very important. And I think you're going to have your CROs asking to hire for these roles to bring alignment between their go-to-market teams and really be that right-hand person for them.
I think I'll take it a step further. I think that you're actually going to see more CROs start to come up through the RevStrat pathway.
Oh, interesting.
As an orientation of what's really needed at that CRO level. I think right now we orient really heavily to CRO being like head of sales, and they build that team and they have strategy. Like I don't want to take away from any of the CROs that I work with. They have strategy and that alignment, but I think over starting this year, you're going to start to see more CRO roles filled with people who came up through that revenue strategy side of the business, because it is such an important part of that ultimate like leadership role that you're taking on at the CRO position.
Interesting. That's a good one.
There's a lot to come in 2025.
I know. Okay. One last prediction for me. And I don't have data to back this up. I wish I did, but it's just a gut feeling. It's just a gut feeling. Back in 2021, we went through the Great Resignation. We saw a ton of movement. And I predict it's going to happen again. I think it's been a rough couple of years, especially for people in tech sales. I think the market is going to open up. So I expect you're going to see sellers moving around. And what that means is you've got to have a strategy to keep your top sellers. You've got to have a really solid onboarding program. And a lot of companies divested in their onboarding programs. You are behind the ball right now. My fear is these companies are not investing in onboarding soon enough to be able to prepare for this movement. And I also just think, you've got to have recruiters available. And there are so many recruiters that unfortunately were negatively impacted in the last couple of years. And so you should be out looking for those great recruiters who can help you hire this top sales talent, because I just predict we're going to see a ton of movement.
I think tying it back to everything we talked about in the annual planning series, what you often like anchor things like the number of recruiters you need on, or your onboarding resources we talked about in some of the episodes, is the number of hires that you're making. But if you're blind to the amount of like attrition then you set yourself up for trouble. So
totally.
Yeah. I think between all of these new companies popping up that are just blowing out their quotas because everyone's buying AI, like all the stuff we just talked about, like there's going to be movement in the tech world specifically. But really, I agree. DevOps, individual leaders. I can see that. I want the data, but I can see that.
Yeah, I want the data too. It's just a prediction right now. We'll check in at the end of the year and see if any of our predictions were correct.
Yeah.
But that's where we're at. Maybe we'll check in mid-year to see how they're tracking.
Mid-year. That's a good goal. We'll put that in our planning for today. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we should actually probably get to our planning meeting.
Yes, we should.
Because we have a lot to talk about. But 2025 is going to be a good year.
It's going to be great. Happy New Year's, everyone.
Happy New Year. Thanks for joining the Revenue Insiders. If you're enjoying the Revenue Insiders, we'd love your support. Follow us, rate, and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Your feedback helps us grow and reach more listeners like you.